Good morning. Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Society of Bangor. I am Reverend Andrew Moeller, and it is great to be here with you this morning. As you can tell, there are a lot of things going on today. We have our 10th annual Apple Chapel happening downstairs for our young people where they get to make apple cider. And we have had some changes in our lineup for this morning. Molly texted me this morning saying that she is not feeling well and is home ill. But we are blessed because we have two professional musicians in our group. And so Jack will be filling in for Molly. Before we get started, I just want to welcome anybody who is joining us today for the first time, whether you're here in the sanctuary or whether you're joining us on Zoom. It is a pleasure to have you with us. For those of you who are here, we invite you to stay afterwards and join us for some coffee and refreshments, a great time to get to know each other. And I'm stealing a little bit of Phyllis's thunder here, but after the service here in the sanctuary, we're going to have a chat with the minister. So if you've got any questions about this congregation or Unitarian Universalism or what I talk about in the sermon, you're welcome to grab a cup of coffee, come back in here at 11:15, and we will have a little chat and just see where it takes us. So with that said, Phyllis, do we have any other announcements this morning?
I hope everybody can hear me through the mask. Okay. At 11:30 also after church, those of us who have been involved in a social justice issue around multiculturalism and anti-racism as a community have been meeting and reading several different books. We're now finishing with Heather McGee's The Sum of Us. We meet downstairs. I don't know what the name of that room is. The cafe? Okay. And at 11:30, probably till 1, we're going to be talking about finishing up on that book. We call ourselves, I thought we were showing up for racial equity, SURE. It's been written down here as stepping up. That's also good. So that's this morning after church. We have I can barely read this, but we know, if you've hopefully seen the posters, this is the month that Women with Wings are celebrating 30 amazing years of being together. Just amazing. And we decided that we would have a concert, which is happening at 3 o'clock on Saturday, October 7th. And it's going to be purely songs that all of us have written ourselves. So it's a very special concert. So if you want to come, it's by donation only, and we're doing it at 3 o'clock on Saturday. Thank you. And on Thursday, we're doing a potluck meal and singing for anyone who maybe can't make it to the concert, but we hope you can, and wants to show up and celebrate the 30 years with us. If you've ever sung with Wings, you are always considered a winger. So that's hand in hand, heart to heart. And perhaps not least, October 21st. We always do this the weekend before Thanksgiving, right? The weekend before Halloween, the Great Pumpkin Yard Sale. So we're going to be starting to collect things in the narthex. We've got some dates for you to look at in terms of, I think they're on the back of your program, in terms of bringing things in to start stashing them in the narthex. And then we have a great team that starts Friday afternoon to set up. So hopefully it will be another resounding success, and it will be that way based on your contributions and help. Thank you. I think that's everything. All right. We will turn it over to Jack in the introit. Lighting our chalice this morning are BB and CC Cashman. This light we kindle is set in the lamp of our history. We inherit this free faith from brave and gentle, fierce and outspoken hearts and minds that have come before us. Let us be worthy inheritors of this faith, and through our good works, pass it boldly to a new generation. Blessed be. Our opening hymn is in your teal hymn book, 1003.
And we're going to build it so that the first line is sung by, if you can see me, that part. Just follow the people in front of you. We're going to sing it all the way through once, and then we're going to build it.
I'd like to invite all of our young people to come down for our time for all ages. As we, you like to be right up front and center. Well, that's great, because you've got a sparkly face to look at. So as we're settling in, I'm going to start here. Our song this morning, Where Do We Come From? And this story is a little bit of that story of where did Unitarianism begin? This is a real story. And the story happened about 455 years ago in the faraway land of Transylvania, which is in the country of Romania today. Our story begins with a queen named Isabella who lived in the country of Hungary and had a baby named John. And so we're going to do you have a picture of that? We can show a picture of Queen Isabella. Atticus? There we go. Okay, great. The young prince was raised by his mother because his father was away fighting to defend the kingdom. The country of Hungary was such a sad place to live in those days because everybody was fighting. Everyone wanted to take over the kingdom of Hungary and make it their own. Even within the kingdom, there were people who were fighting about religion, each group claiming that their religion was the one and only true religion, and everyone should follow it. The queen wished that the fighting would stop and that the baby's father would come home so they could live together as a happy family, but it was not to be. It was sad because the king died in an accident about 2 weeks before the baby was born, which made the 2-week-old baby a king. Now, do you think that a 2-week-old baby is old enough to rule a kingdom? No. Yeah, probably not. I think you're right there. So while the baby became king, it was actually his mother who ruled the kingdom until the baby was old enough to be able to become the ruler. The fighting continued, and as many other rulers in the surrounding countries tried to take advantage of the queen and take over her lands, the queen did not like to fight, so they took away quite a bit of the Hungarian kingdom. But the queen was also very wise, and she made arrangements with another ruler, the Ottoman Sultan, Suleiman, to create a smaller kingdom called Transylvania. The Sultan protected that kingdom. Here, the queen and her baby could be safe from the invaders. The smaller kingdom was also protected by mountains that surrounded all around it, and it was very, very safe. And so they lived for many years protected by the Sultan and the mountains. As the young king grew up, his mother taught him how to be a wise ruler. She taught him how to listen to others and to try and find nonviolent ways of sorting out differences, even though people inside the smaller kingdom still fought with each other about religion. Eventually, when the queen died, when the king Sigismund was 19 years old, he then became old enough to rule the kingdom. And so the next slide, we have a picture of King Sigismund, who is the only Unitarian king in history. Now, people from all the major religions in his kingdom started to go to the king and try to tell them that they had the one and true religion that everybody should follow, and everyone who didn't should be punished. They said, one king, one country, one religion. This is the way that we do things in Europe in the 1500s. The king should choose the religion and everyone should follow. But the new king remembered his mom and what she had taught him about how to solve differences among people by talking, listening, not fighting. He said, I wonder what it would be like if I invited all the people from the region and all these different religions to come to one place and talk about their differences. And that's just what he did. King Sigismund invited preachers from all the regions of his kingdom and his court to a conversation about religion. He invited the best Calvinist preachers, the best Catholic preachers, the best Lutheran teachers, the best Greek Orthodox preachers to a conference. They also asked the court minister, the newly appointed court minister, Francis David, who had been developing a new form of Christian faith that believed that there was one God instead of many gods, a Trinity. Since Francis believed in one God, not three, they called him a Unitarian, uni meaning one. Starting at 5 o'clock, let's see, we've got a picture of Francis David, a couple pictures. We have him talking at this thing that I'm talking about next. So starting at 5 o'clock in the morning, and lasting for 10 days, preachers from each religious group came and they started sharing their ideas and theologies. They all tried to convince the king that they had the one and true religion. At the end of the debate, Francis David, the Unitarian, said some words that are now made famous. He said, "We need not think alike to love alike." King Sigismund thought this was the wisest thing that anybody had ever said during this whole 10-day-long conference. It was now up to the young king to decide which religion was best for his kingdom. Francis David's words stuck with him, and the king thought about what his mother had taught him too. Finally, he made a decision. He issued a royal decree called an edict that is named after the town in which the conference was held, Torta. This is what it said. He said, "I hereby issue the Edict of Religious Toleration. I proclaim that every person can follow the religion of their choosing. No one shall be attacked or mistreated for practicing their religion by anyone else." The king was so impressed with Francis David that this new Unitarian religion that King Sigismund chose to become a Unitarian, and he kept Francis David as his court supervisor. Now, the story is not quite a happy ever after story. King John Sigismund died when he was 31 from a carriage accident. And after his death, Unitarians were not always tolerated. Francis David eventually was imprisoned for his ideas, and he died in a dungeon in Romania. But because King Sigismund and Francis David, Unitarianism took hold in Transylvania, where it remains strong today. Unitarianism began with beliefs about the unity of God and came to stand for the values of religious freedom and tolerance. We need not love or think alike, right? To love alike. And speaking of which, I am guessing that all of you, with all the energy I am sensing in the room, are ready, really love to go downstairs and participate in our Apple Chapel. Ooh. So thank you for listening about the beginning of our... Uh-oh. Please join me in the spirit of meditation and prayer. Great universal spirit, interconnected web of which we are a part, we gather in this time and space to hold in our hearts the joys and sorrows of this beloved community. Today, we hold up many joys of journeys being safely completed, of new beginnings, of new life being brought into the world, of new citizens being recognized, of healing and recovery and returning to beloved community, and for all the people who have supported people going through difficult times. Spirit, we are grateful for this place where we can share those joys and sorrows that are part of our lives, because we know that each life tells an important story. Each life holds a deep and abiding truth. By coming together in this time and this way, we grow closer to each other, and we grow closer to becoming one. Blessed be. Amen.
It is now time to open our hearts and our generosity of spirit to gift this congregation for all the work we do and all the work we will do. I'm just wondering about where the money is. Oh, the barn. The Bangor Area Recovery Network is going to be receiving those contributions of cash that you put in the plate that are undesignated.
It is with great gratitude that we receive these gifts to help support this beloved community and the Bangor Area Recovery Network that does so much to build beloved community for those in our community who are going through the sacred work of recovery. Blessed be.
In an excerpt from the Edict of Torda. His Majesty, our Lord, in whatever manner he, together with his realm, i.e. the Diet, legislated in the matter of religion at the previous diets, in the same manner now, in this Diet, he reaffirms that in every place that preachers shall preach and explain the gospel, each according to his understanding of it, and if the congregation like it, well, if not, no one shall compel them from their souls, for their souls would not be satisfied, but they shall be permitted to keep a preacher whose teaching they approve. Therefore, none of the superintendents or others shall abuse the preachers. No one shall be reviled for his religion by anyone, according to the previous statutes. And it is not permitted that anyone should threaten anyone else by imprisonment or by removal from his post for his teaching. For faith is the gift of God. This comes from hearing, which is hearing in is the word of God. Edict of Torda.
Thank you, Jack, for wonderful music. And if you hadn't noticed, the music that is featured mostly in the service has a Hungarian connection in some way, and so a little different and wonderful. So, where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? These three simple lines from our opening hymn capture the essence of what religion and spirituality are all about. Where do we come from? As a child growing up in the Unitarian Universalist congregation, I remember hearing stories about the faraway land of Transylvania where there was a Unitarian king and a great teacher who was an orator who converted the whole town of Torda to Unitarianism. These stories seemed so fantastic that they felt more like a fairy tale than actual history. Still, the stories stuck with me throughout my childhood, my adulthood, and eventually into seminary and beyond. There was something magical and comforting about these stories, something in them that made me feel like the faith that I grew up in was not some fringe philosophy, but a deep religious and spiritual tradition that has lasted for over 450 years. A lineage going back to the origins of many other Protestant traditions. It was grounding, it was rich, and I felt proud to say to people who are chiding my Unitarian faith as, oh, that's that faith where you can believe anything. I pointed out that that was not true. While we didn't have a central dogma or fixed set of beliefs, we did have at the core a belief of respect, of tolerance, and accepting of other people's truths and faiths. And I kind of hinted subtly back to them that maybe they didn't. Like any other great religious tradition, we have a long and rich history. Something about that connection to history has helped form my religious identity and has made me feel like I was part of something noble, wise, and beneficial that has stood the test of time. Even before receiving my theological training, I found studying history of world religions to be interesting and exciting. It was informative to learn how different religious and spiritual leaders received their wisdom and engaged in the challenging work of trying to live out their faith and teaching it to others. They answered those three simple questions. Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Last week, along with a couple of other members of our congregation, I completed a 12-hour workshop put on by Wabanaki Reach, a non-native group of people in Maine working to support Indigenous people of Maine and their continued effort towards regaining sovereignty. They educate non-native people about Wabanaki's history and current issues. This pilot workshop was titled Decolonizing Faith. It is an effort to raise awareness among non-native people about the role that faith traditions have played in colonizing or taking over the unceded lands of the Wabanaki people. One of the small group exercises was to tell the story of who our people were and the context of our families of origin. There were 4 people in my group, and none of us knew much about our ancestors beyond our grandparents. I think, like most of us, we had we all had some idea of when our European families may have come to this continent, but we only speculated why. We didn't know exactly what brought them here. I've felt kind of self-conscious for years because I have not known that much of my family history. That might be more, what I learned is that it might be more common than one might think in our American culture. We don't always know our history. We don't know where we came from, which affects our answers to the other questions of what are we and where are we going? As we engage in our work as a congregation to actively dismantle culture of oppression and decolonize our faith, one of the crucial things that oppressed people implore us to do is to look at our own history and become aware of the privileges that have come from that history, from our ancestors, who sometimes were oppressed. More often than not, they were also the oppressor. This self-examination is deep, deep spiritual work. It is informative work. It is transformative work. This past spring, on my sabbatical journey to Europe, I traveled through my mother's homeland of Scotland and our Unitarian faith's homeland of Transylvania and Romania. Visiting these places helped me reflect on my family and our Unitarian heritage. It was an eye-opening experience that has left me curious and wanting to learn more. This month, our theme is heritage. The Cambridge English Dictionary defines heritage as, quote, features belonging to a culture of a particular society, such as traditions, languages, or buildings that were created in the past and still have historical importance. In other words, our heritage is our ancestors' legacy. Many aspects of Unitarian Universalism today reflect our ancestors' beliefs, their worldviews, their customs, and their manners. Some of it is good, like our story from All Ages earlier, that shows our religious ancestors were more than just another sect seeking dominance during the Protestant Reformation. From our beginning, it shows that we embraced an ethic of tolerance and freedom to choose faith, quote, each according to their understanding of religion. And spirituality, as it expanded over the years to include teachings outside of the Judeo-Christian or their Judeo-Christian upbringing. This is part of our Unitarian history that we should be proud of. There are so many exciting things here to discover. There is an element of very early feminism in that story that I talked to you about. A queen who ruled a kingdom in a male-dominated world. That was rare. A prince who listened and looked for nonviolent ways to deal with a major issue in his kingdom. Pretty rare, especially for those times. There was also this connection with non-Christian influences at our roots. The Sultan Suleiman, who was a Muslim. When we think of our Unitarian history, we don't often think about people who came before, who have contributed to the development of our faith. We are theirs, and they are ours. When we think of Unitarian history, we don't try to repeat ourselves. This past May, when I was in Cluj, or Kolosevar, which is the name of Cluj in Hungarian, the capital city of Romania, I had no idea how big Unitarianism was, and still is in that part of the world. It's pretty huge, considering the size of those countries. There are over 60,000 Unitarians who are part of the Hungarian Unitarian Church. Yes, Unitarians in Romania identify as Hungarian culturally. To illustrate some of the places I visited, I'm going to give you a little mini slideshow, and this is going to be interesting. Actually, I've got a screen here, thanks to Phyllis, that I can see what's being popped up here. But let's go to that first slide. Okay. So here we have some pictures. The big, huge building there is actually a high school. The high school is a Unitarian high school, and it takes up almost a whole city block. The school has about 800 students, and 25 to 30% of those are Unitarians from all over Romania and Hungary. Inside the school, you can see the dorm room where I stayed. You can see how big the school is. Inside, you can see a picture of the soccer court, which is a courtyard inside the school. And then there's a picture of the chapel inside the school. They actually have chapel services every Friday morning in that high school. Let's go to the next slide. The other thing that is housed in that building is the Hungarian Unitarian Church's headquarters. And the picture you see on the top there is a picture of the office of the bishop. The Unitarians in Hungary and Romania actually use a different sort of church organizational structure that's more closer to Presbyterianism than it is to the congregational polity that we organize ourselves with. Up in the upper corner there, you'll see a picture of the crest. There's actually a crest of the Hungarian Unitarian movement. And then there's council chambers down below where they have their meetings and make decisions. And the picture is an arch of a building across the street that used to be a property that was used to house the bishop. Yes, there is a Unitarian bishop who used to live in this huge palatial building, but is now rented out to restaurants and other organizations. Next slide, I'll go to here. This is the city of Torda, where the debate and the edict of Torda was delivered. And Francis David is a statue of him in the square. And on the other side of this is a Catholic church. There is a little monument there. If you can see, it's like a ladder going up and turning into birds. And this was a monument that was placed on the 450th anniversary of the Edict of Torda to celebrate the beginnings of religious freedom. Next slide. This is the church in St. Peter. This is the town that I stayed in when I was there. You can see some pictures of that tower. If you look at the very side of the tower, this church was founded in 1526, so even before the Edict of Torda. You can see a picture of the reception line after the service that I attended on Mother's Day. You can see some of the kids getting ready to do the service, and the person sitting on the left in black, that's Kingma, who is the minister in that congregation. And then a couple pictures of the sanctuary and another angle of the church. Next slide. For our guild members, I thought you would get a kick out of seeing the Women's Guild in Transylvania. There are 17 different villages, all in the Transylvania area, very small, very rural congregations, and they happened to be having their annual meeting while I was there. And so I got to be an honored guest, and I got to see the very impressive flag parade and some of the rituals that they held inside the sanctuary. The church that we were at had a big plaque. It's actually a UNESCO protected site. And then there's a picture of me sitting in the front pew there with the first female president of the Hungarian Unitarian Church. We had much to talk about. And then a picture of some of the members in the center there of the church at St. Peter who went along to that Women's Guild meeting. And then finally a picture of some of my colleagues that I got to meet with while I was there. It was kind of a wonderful, wonderful thing. So we can go back to the black slide, or you can just leave that up maybe so people can let their eyes wander. Historians tell us that it's essential to study our history so we can avoid making the same mistakes. Psychologists tell us that studying history of our childhood and family systems are crucial because many of our behaviors are learned and relearned and then passed down from generation to generation. Dysfunction, propensity for depression, substance use disorders, along with joy and adventuresomeness and happiness, all wrapped up in our ancestors' legacy and cultural heritage. The same holds true for our Unitarian Universalist heritage. How well do we know our history? We know of a couple of historical touch points, perhaps, but how well do we know where we came from? How have we grown? What have we learned from those experiences? What patterns of behavior do we still struggle with today? And what habits do we need to relearn or unlearn to continue living into our faith so that we can transform and liberate our faith, leaving a healthier and improved legacy for our children? We teach our children about spirituality through the lens of social justice and other world religions, but I don't know that we do a very good job of grounding them in our own Unitarian Universalist history. I think this is a contributing factor to why some of our young people go out and leave on their own and don't fully appreciate the part of this living tradition that we are part of. What if teaching about history is not just about learning from our successes and building on our accomplishments, like what our Romanian Unitarian cousins look like? There is also something to be learned about a small faith tradition that has lasted for so long. It is their tradition of religious tolerance and freedom that has not only allowed them to survive for over 450 years, it is a tradition that has helped them live through 2 world wars and over 40 years of Soviet occupation that tried to stamp out religion altogether. Still, Unitarianism survives, survives, and it continues to thrive. Interestingly enough, this ethic of religious freedom that I talked about from the Unitarian churches early on is an ethic that in that part of the world, in Transylvania, as I was talking with other people, is alive in the Reformed Church, in the Catholic Church, in the Calvinist religion. People understand that we belong to each other and that we may not think the same way, but we still need each other to overcome intolerance and all the destruction that we find around us. Our ancestors still have that to teach. I plan to continue working for change by bringing more of our history into my preaching and teaching as your minister. We can continue to find ways to share that awareness with our children and conversations with other groups of faith as we try to celebrate the wisdom of our ancestors and be aware of how our ancestors gave us this wise knowledge that we so desperately need today, and how our ancestors have caused harm and have shown us in not so great ways that we need to make some changes, and we'll be talking about those at another time. But as we embrace our history and the learning of our ancestors and our heritage, we can live to this long legacy of religious heritages as we remember those immortal words that we don't have to think alike to love alike. I look forward to joining you on that journey. Blessed be. Amen. I now invite our choir elves to help us sing our closing hymn, 1051. It's in the teal hymnal. If you want to use the hymnal, the words will appear on the screen. As we extinguish our Unitarian Universalist chalice flame, symbol of faith, hope, love, connection, and the heritage that we have inherited, and the creators of the legacy that we will leave behind, let us be reminded that although our time of worship has come to an end, our service to each other and to the world has just begun. I now invite you to rise in body or in spirit to sing our benediction.